Yeah. Okay, so what are your goals or your hopes, like, after this session? Like, what do you pretty much want to get out of this session?
I know I need to, like, cut down on my time,
Mhm.
so I definitely need to figure out, like, how to fit all the content I want to say
Yeah.
without going over so much. That's, like, the biggest one. And then the second one, I think, is, like, continuity, making sure everything flows.
Yeah.
And then I guess I have a third one, making sure that, like, my idea is, like, unique enough to the room.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is definitely something that's been done before, but it hasn't been done from, like, a pre-service teacher or, like, from a student's perspective. It's always, like, the Red for Ed Alley and things like Rally or things like that. Like, so, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Imagine going to school. Your best friend is waiting for you at the morning table, and you're like, "Hey, best friend! Oh my God, it's good to see you." Yes. And so you guys, like, walk to class together. You're going to class. You're ready to go to your period, actually. And you get to your locker. Oh my God, it's locker time, whatever. But your locker buddy is there. Shit. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you have to get to class. You only get 7 minutes to get to your class. They only get 7 minutes. They only get 7 minutes to get to their class. So you're waiting for them to put all their stupid notebooks in their locker, and of course they take forever. So, okay, you got your stuff. Walking with your buddy, you're like, okay, pre-algebra, right? And they're like, yep, we're going. So you get to pre-algebra, and you're like, yeah, okay, balancing equations. That's pretty much all pre-algebra is. And you get ready for your teacher to say that as he goes to write on the board, and he says, textbook taping day. Who's excited? Textbook taping day, right? And so you look at your friend, and you guys are both like, textbook taping day, all right. You go to the back of the classroom, you get your textbook tape, you get your textbook, you tape it up. Because it's a classroom set, you only have your notebooks in your locker. And so you guys are taping up your textbook while your teacher's trying to figure out the technology for the room, and that's all good and dandy. Second, third, and fourth period kind of pass. Pretty much the same thing. You tape up another, like, class set of books in another class. Other classes pass without much to report. And then it's lunchtime, oh my God. So you're not really feeling like lunch, but you have to eat something because, like, you're a person and you need to, like, have fuel for your body. So you, of course, go with your staple, the cheesy breadsticks and the apple. And the cheesy breadsticks, my God, that glue tasting, not tasting per se, but maybe definitely, like, the consistency of it is glue. And that contrasts with, like, the crisp bite of that apple, my God, a delicacy, am I right? And so you go and you go through the rest of your periods, and finally the 7th period bell rings, and you're so excited. So you go back to your locker, and finally you get there first this time. Imagine going to school. Imagine going to school, and you walk in, and there's your bestie. Hey, bestie, how's it going? And, he's just chilling. He's eating his yogurt parfait. He's doing his thing. And you're like, come on, we gotta go to class. He's like, I got a strawberry. Hang on. And so you guys are just chilling, walking to class. And you see Bauer and Paige, the school therapy dog and therapist. You say, hey, Bauer, pet. Hey, Paige, what's going on? Like, after some pets and a nice, meaningful conversation, you walk to your locker where you just grab your books and go. And you go to first period, which is Earth and Space Science. And my God, are you excited for Earth and Space Science? It's Earth and Space Science. And today's, like, Planetarium Day. And Planetarium Day is so dope because you've heard other students talk about it. But today was your turn. And so after 55 minutes spent laying under the stars, having the teacher talk about all the different constellations and how to look at through a telescope, you go to second period, which, of course, you have a test. That's fine. Third, fourth period kind of pass without much to report. Yeah, there wasn't much there. You're thinking, not much there. And so you go to lunch, and you check the online lunch menu, and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling the Cuban turkey bowl, nor am I feeling the egg rolls. I'm not really feeling chicken nuggets either. I'll go to soup and salad line. That's usually what I go to anyways. Or what you go to anyways. And so then you have your lunch, and you head back to your next classes. They pretty much pass. Nothing else happens. And it's time to go home. You see your bestie again. And you all walk out to the bus lot together to go home. Another day passes. Another day in the life. Okay. So how many of you experienced a school day kind of like the first one? Yeah. How many of you experienced something like the second one? Yeah, how many were somewhere in the middle? Yeah, okay. So obviously these school days were drastically different, right? And I made them that way. I wanted to show you how different they were. But I actually want to talk about what these two school days have in common. The first is that these 2 school days are public schools. These 2 school days are publicly funded, publicly attended. They are public students just going here and having their public school day. The second thing that I want to touch on is that I attended both of these schools. I attended the school where I can remember sitting there and taping up my class text or my class set of books and eating my apple at lunch at DeKalb Middle School. And then I also remember at Carroll High School talking to Paige and Bauer about my car accident and things that happened along with that. I can link you to Bauer's Instagram page. It's quite adorable. So, I went to DeKalb Middle School, and after a couple years there, my mom remarried, and we moved to a bigger city. We moved to Fort Wayne. And so that city had a lot more resources, it had a lot more funding in this area, and that meant that it was a lot more affluent. It also meant that it was only 20 minutes down the road from my old school. Yeah, I think that's nuts. As a college student, I've had the chance to reflect on my education experiences as well as a pre-service teacher. I've had the experience or had the opportunity to just sit there and really think about what I've done in education. And it always boils down to these questions for me. Why is this our reality? Why do we accept the disparities I've shown today and the ones that exist outside of what I've shown? And why do we need to fix it? What do we need to do to fix it? My name is Megan Markarian, and I intend to work not only in the English language arts education sector, but also as a future voting member on the Board of Education. I want to go into education legislation. And I believe that the capitalization and the commodification of our public education, stay with me, there's a lot of shuns, has led to the funding disparities we currently see. And as a result, we have lost public education as a civil liberty. And thus, we have failed our students in their inalienable right to an education. Okay, so you might be wondering, okay, this is a lot to grapple with. Okay, so let's go back. We're going to go all the way back. We're going to tackle this why question. Why is this reality? Why is this our reality? And it can be traced, my friends. We can watch from our comfortable seats of hindsight as we look at how our forefathers wrecked us. And we actually can go back. Oh no, I didn't click. I always forgot. We actually go back to the First World War. The First World War was a culture of industrialization and rapid economic growth. And that meant that everybody was looking for a job. That also meant that the schools had to start testing at a higher rate. They had to start seeing, okay, blue collar, white collar, blue collar, white collar. They had to see who would fit for what. And so, this led to the very first standardized test, the College Examination Boards, otherwise known today as to us as the SAT. We all know what that is. And so it was really to test and see who had the intelligence to be in white collar, who had the skills to be in blue collar. In reality, who could take a test better and who couldn't. And so this actually led to the phrase teaching to a test, which I'm sure you've all heard. Like, we use that day to day, whether you're a teacher or not. And so what happened then when schools taught poorly to the test? What happens when schools do poorly on tests? That means less money for you from the state government. And so I want to emphasize state government here, because if this is not a federal problem, because according to the U.S. Constitution, states are mandated to fund schools. They're mandated to fund schools. And that means that under state constitutions, education is an inalienable right. Not under the federal one, but under the state ones. But what this also means is that how, why, and what states spend their money on is ultimately up to them. The federal government does not have a say in that. States do. And then, once more, this is a state job because they make up a majority of the funding pie. So there's local taxes that go into funding for schools. There's state and there's federal. Local, it's about 45. States is about 45. Federal is about 10. And so this is actually why disparities like the ones I've shown you exist. This is why disparities like the ones I showed you between DeKalb Middle School and DeKalb High School are there. So yeah, I attended DeKalb Middle School from like 2010 to 2012, and that was like a really hard time, obviously, but it was also a really fun time. I had lots of friends. Also during that time, DeKalb County Public Schools were on academic probation from 2010 to 2012 when I was there. They were actually on academic probation a while after that. And that meant unless their state test scores went up, unless their state test scores went up, funding for an already struggling school will be cut. Leaving equally struggling students in this learning void with nothing but tape and weird smelly books and these weird glue-like breadsticks. That's not a learning environment. That's a struggle. And so you might be asking, but wait, Megan, like local funding. You said local funding makes up 45% of it, and I did. Let's talk about local funding. Let's talk about property taxes. So local funding, you were excited about it. Local funding actually puts schools like Carroll High School at an advantage above schools like DeKalb Middle School. And this is why. So the majority of it is property taxes. And the way that property taxes work is that if the area has a high property value, that means that more tax revenue will come from it. If an area has a low property value, that means less tax revenue is going to come from it. Which areas have low property values? The ones that are impoverished, the ones that already aren't making enough money, the ones that are filled with the blue-collar workers who are disenfranchised by tests like the college examination boards way back when. And so I'm trying to show you here that the system is already rigged to disenfranchise further impoverished areas. We're going to get more into why it's a dumb idea for states to fund schools. We're going to get more into that. But this is how our state and local governments have capitalized off our education. They take money away from low-performing schools where they save a buck because they say, look, these test scores aren't good, guys. They're just not good. This is my money. I'm putting it over here. See this? Into the high-performing schools where there's a lot of test scores. Yeah. So that's how they make money then. They're putting money into an investment that they know will already pay off. They use the words stable institutions and things like that to cover this up. To cover up the fact that they're taking away money, siphoning money away from schools who need it, who need resources like Bauer and Page, and putting them into schools that are already doing well due to things like local property taxes. And so you might be asking, oh my God, this is like so hopeless. What am I going to do? So there are efforts. Oh, there's the apple. There are efforts to get funding back to where it used to be. But, I say where it used to be. So due to the 2008 Great Recession that we all know about, in that time, banks basically were like, look, buy all the stock. This is good stock. And everybody's like, yeah, I want that stock. And they're like, yeah, it's good. And so everybody bought this stock, but in fact it was meaningless penny stocks. Nothing that really mattered. And so that meant that the government ended up having to bail the banks out because they were giving people money that they didn't have. And so this left nearly half the states spending less on schools in 2016 than they were in 2007 in state funding. So starting at 2007, and this is where they were in 2016. You can see that local funding also dipped, and that's just due to the fact that this was a Great Recession, and that meant that local, state, and federal governments had to do budget cuts. Okay, so you're like, okay, but there's got to be something, and I'm like, yeah, we're getting there. So there is a bill right now. There is a bill on the floor. It's called H.R. Bill 771, the Choices in Education Act. This is a valiant effort made by the House here. Basically, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to give each student, a specific student, a voucher, like they do for private schools, but we're going to do it public and private. And so basically, they're saying, look, money, here you go, take it, do what you will. We all know that throwing money at a problem isn't going to fix it. And so you might be saying, okay, but there's got to be something they can do to revise that bill. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. What a great idea. This bill has been in the House since January. We are in November. We are almost to the end of the year. And with protests like Red for Ed going on right now, the time to act could not be more prudent. And so I want to talk about why the time to act is so prudent. We live in a capitalist society. We all know this. We all know that there's not necessarily really any ethical consumption under capitalism. This also means that capitalism is cyclical. Capitalism happens in a circle. So basically, we all are like, look, all this money is going to the economy. We have so much money. Look at it all in the economy. And we're like, oh my God, we don't have any money. Right? Which is a very boiled down version of stagflation or recession, like what happened in 2008. And as I said before, it's cyclical. It's going to happen again. What happens when there's an already historical precedent for education receiving the biggest expenditure cut when this next recession hits? Who's going to get it again? We have a historical precedent here, people. We have already this idea that education is the lowest of lows in terms of resources. And so, now you're feeling really hopeless, right? Now you're like, oh my God, where's the nearest, rooftop? I'm kidding. This guy's name is Passy Salberg, and he's the answer. I am also the answer. But, we're coinciding here. So he's a Finnish representative on numerous international education and government advising committees. So he really knows his stuff. He also taught in Finland. And Finland is the #1 ranking education system in the world. And on his advising committees, he said a lot of the same things that I have been saying, and that I'm going to say. He came down to 3 main reasons as to what we need to, or 3 main tactics that we can take to fix this really big problem. And he has advised on these committees to do these things. The first one, the first is that we have to remove standardized tests. If we start basing student success on how they actually learn and how they can grow in their learning, we're going to see less stress, higher grades, and higher student motivation. We're going to see intrinsic motivation. Motivation that comes from within yourself to do better. Because that's what happens when you don't compare a student to another student. They see themselves as their own person, not another bullet point. Number 2, we're going to fund schools equitably. And what does equitably mean? That means that you give the person the stuff that they need to do the thing. That's it. If they are struggling because they don't have enough stuff and they can't do the thing, then you give them more of the stuff. Insert money and successful in education as you see fit. So essentially, this means that things like districts, class, test scores have no more say in public education, as I think it should be. Number 3, we're going to ensure that all students attend school for free, beginning from kindergarten through community college. What does this mean? Again, like I said, class and test scores in districts have no say in how we should educate our kids. And that should continue through community college, since we have an economic precedent that we need to have at least some sort of higher education to succeed. And so, should a person decide to go beyond community college, that will be on their own dime, and with whatever aid and scholarships they receive. I decided to include that because I know there's somebody in the crowd going, but I don't want to pay higher taxes. So, this sounds like a tall order to that person in the crowd. I know, and that's because it literally is one. It's the biggest order I've ever asked of somebody. It's the biggest thing I've ever told somebody I wanted to do, other than, hey mom, I'm bi. We have to ask for a lot if we want the system to be better. I'm not seeking, though, to change the system. I don't want to just revise it. I don't want to throw money at a problem. We have to get rid of it. Get rid of the system. Go to its roots. Rip them up. They're gone. They don't matter here anymore. And there are clear indicators that our system has failed our students. Students should be learning and growing, not worrying about the condition of their textbooks or if they're going to make it to class on time because they have a stupid locker buddy who can't get his shit together. They need a place full of warmth and opportunity. My high school was a very good high school. I know that. But I'm not asking for a therapy dog or a therapist, though I think that should be included in every school. But everybody deserves a chance to see the stars. Everybody deserves a chance to foster their learning. Everybody deserves an education free from the confines and the chains of a budget. Education is a right, and if nothing changes, I'm going to say I hope you all have money for private schools. Because that's the future without effective public education. Stand with me. Stand for public education. Thank you. I know, it was really long.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 20 minutes long. Jesus Christ.
Well, that's okay.
I timed it.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I apologize.
Okay, no, you're.
You
I don't mind at all. Yeah, whatever. Well, yeah, I can bullshit it this way. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so general feedback. I really liked it, and I really like how you give it, because I think you're like, there's parts like I really, like you're funny. Like
yeah.
I like your little parts, and like you know what you're doing, and I know you probably know like that's your strength, like those little humor parts.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked that. Like in the beginning of your storytelling, like it was really like fun to follow, and I liked like You're really good at that part.
Thank you.
Like, I want to be able to do how you did that.
Oh, no.
Seriously.
Stop.
No,
Thank
really.
you.
Like, I loved it.
Oh, my God.
So it is long.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be, like, what, 8 to 10 minutes, I think? So, like, right. But obviously you're passionate about it, which is, like, another thing that I really like. Because you can tell that you're, like, you know what you're talking about. And you're, like, you're about it. Like, I really like that you know you're passionate about it. And you're not just, like, coming up with a topic to do for this big talk. You know what I mean? Like, you want to tell us about it. So I think, like, the biggest thing now is just figuring out, like, what information to, like, for sure keep, you know what I mean? And then what to, like, cut back on just to, like, keep it in that 8 to 10 minutes.
Right.
Because, like, you have a lot to say, which is good, but I think it's, like, you know, bringing it back and being like, okay, like, I know this is important, but maybe not for, like, your main topic.
That's a good point.
So I guess, like, my first question is then, what is your, like, when we leave that classroom, like, and it was at the end. I got, like, more of, like, what your point was at the end. But if you're going to, like, can you just retell me, like, what you're, like, you know, like, in a sentence or two, like, what your...
So, our government has capitalized off of our schools in order to make money. And that has led to a failure in teaching and education and the learning that is done by our students.
Okay. Now I see where you're coming from. Because, yes, I see it. Okay.
Oh, she's so shiny. We're good. Sorry.
Okay. So starting from, like, the beginning. So I like the beginning where you talk, like, your opening, like, talking about your school day, especially the, like, because I'm the first school, right? Like, I definitely, like, the whole lunchroom, like, hurrying because you had 5 minutes to get to your class, like, all that stuff. Like, totally, I like that part. And I like the second part being, like the different school day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I would, because, like, I got that you were talking about a different school day, but I would maybe try to make it, like, a little bit more different besides just, like, I guess, like, because I knew it was, like, going to be, it was a different school day when you talked about, like, the therapy person, the therapy dogs, and then, like, the lunch schedule part. And then some of the classes, like, when you talked about, I liked how you wrapped it up at the end, too, like, talking about the stars. Mm-hmm. Like, I liked that part. Maybe just add, like, one more, like, different thing in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was kind of like it. At one point, I was like, wait, are we in the same school? I was like, wait, no, we're not. No, we're, like, in a different day, different school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was, like, a little hard to follow in that second part, just being like, wait, we're on a new, like, this is a different scenario.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
so a lot of schools don't serve, like, caffeine, right? But unless they have, like, the expenditure to do so. So my high school had, like, a little coffee bar, like my high school did. Right, like, I can't believe I went to this fucking high school. I came from, like, the Cal Middle School. I went here.
You know, you said that just being like, you know, in the morning I would go and grab my coffee from the coffee stand. You know what I mean? You're saying something different? Because, like, if you said that, I'd be like, what? At your high school? I'd be like, it's so... Like, I think I would just give you, like, more of a shot that, like, these are two, like, clearly very different, like, high school experiences.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I'm just gonna write that down.
And you know, if you want to say you can, don't feel like you have to, like, I'm just saying, I don't want you to feel like you have to, like, stand the whole hour.
Yeah.
And so from there, so you have your intro, and talked about the two different schools, and then you jump to talking about, was it, like, this, how the state, how, like, the money, like, the,
so, yeah, we go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Was the note cards okay?
Yeah, I was not distracted by you looking at those at all.
Okay.
Like, you definitely, like, I really was, like, super into what you're saying. That's what I was going to say, like, you're really good with, like, you're a very good speaker. Like, I haven't really, like, when I was talking to Bailey, like, she was saying I was super monotone, like, you're not at all, like, you have good fluctuation, and, like, I'm really, like, it's a story, like, I like it a lot. Like,
oh my god. That's so kind. Okay, yeah, it's after this part. I printed this off because I was like, I'm not gonna write all that. Okay, yeah, so we talk about, like, why do we test the way we do?
So,
is that necessary?
That's what I was going to ask. So, I'm not saying it's not necessarily, like, it's not necessary, but I think if your main point is you talking about, so the government's made a lot of money off of how we, like, they're making money off of how we teach, but, like, from that, like, yeah, they're making money, but our school systems, like, our public education clearly isn't, like, you're saying, like, isn't good at this, like, it never was.
Right, and that, like, goes into, like, so the first point to fix it is to get rid of standardized tests. So I figured, okay, what do we have to do? Why, like, what I have to, like, set it up. Like, why do we have
Yeah.
to get rid of standardized tests?
I definitely would bring it up. I just don't know how I would talk about it for as long as you did, just because eventually I was kind of like, with like where I was like kind of waiting for your main point. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I wasn't sure if it was like talking about like the structure of public school and like how to fix
So,
that.
Right.
You
So
know?
could I just say, like, so the first standardized test came out of the First World War, where we had to start testing students at a higher rate to get them into the workforce. This was the college examination boards or the SAT, which basically said, are you smart or can you take a good, or are you good at taking a test? Like, they couldn't decide.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think honestly, yeah.
Would that like be better?
Yeah, because I'm saying that because then it pretty much is just you're just saying like this is what it is. Like we all know what the SAT is, and I like when you said like we all know what the SAT is.
Right.
You know, because like even now, Ball State doesn't even take like you don't even have to give those in now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is but just we all kind of know what that is. So yeah, I think shortening it, just bringing it up so that when we bring this up, it's been in there. But I don't think it has to be like as long as it was.
Yeah, take it back to World War One. What did I say?
So you said like you're basically just gonna say like this is how it started and being like So basically they just want to separate the dumb kids from the smart kids.
Basically,
Blue collar, white collar, which is like I like how you were talking about blue collar, white collar.
Okay, so keep that.
Yeah, because I think like saying where it started is fine. Being like so this is like where you're where the SAT started and why they did this, and then you're basically saying like well obviously now that's outdated because we're not just out of World War One.
Right.
You know like.
Right. Okay, so blue collar versus. I just wrote blue collar versus blue collar. So blue collar versus white collar. And that teaching to should I keep the teaching to the test or do you think that's irrelevant?
Which part?
So I say like, oh, this led to the phrase teaching to the test, which I'm sure you've all heard. But what happens when we don't teach the test? What happens when schools do poorly on tests? Can you just say what happens when schools do poorly on tests?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
do you like that phrase? I mean, I've heard the phrase too. I'm just trying to think of like, so, and then from there you go into.
Then I go into like why this is a state problem and not a federal problem, and why that's bad.
Okay, and
Does that
then
make sense?
because like you're talking federal, you're talking like the government, so that it's not, so that it's reset that part.
So I say that this is not a federal problem because it means less. Okay, so what happens when schools do poorly on tests? It means less money for you from the state government. This is not a federal problem because according to the U.S. Constitution, states are mandated to fund schools, but how and what they spend their money on is not mandated.
Okay, so I like that part, and then what I'm remembering from this part, because like I remember you giving a lot of like saying like how it all really worked, like how the like intertwines of like the money and where it goes, you know what I mean? And like eventually I was kind of like it was just so much information. I was like, wait, you know, and I was like, wait, what? Like I was kind of waiting for like what was gonna tie in. So I think you should have like a brief like why you're bringing it up, but not as in depth, because then you go into being like, okay, so you do that out of test, like you don't get money, but and then you went into saying like when there are the really nice public schools like that you went to, but then like. You explain why they were getting a lot of money and why
due to like
lower
property taxes.
Yeah, so I think making it like that whole section of like you started here on like why it's a state problem, not federal, and then it was like, and then eventually you got here. I think making that part shorter.
Oh,
you know
like the road to get in between.
Pretty much, yeah. Because like eventually when you got there, I was like, oh, I see where you were going. What if it was just like so much information that I was kind of like, wait, where am I? Like, not in a bad way.
No,
like,
no,
good
no,
and I like want to
no.
learn it. It's just for this talk, I was kind of like.
This would definitely be good
a
for
lot.
like, oh, let's talk about like foundations of education, like
Yeah.
one lesson. Yeah.
Right. Which isn't bad. Like I learned a
Yeah.
lot and I like it just for this. Like
I love that
it's-
you said I learned a lot.
I did. Like I was listening and I liked it, but just like to shorten it.
Yeah.
I think like making that part shorter. So like pretty much like you obviously have a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I don't like I'm not educated as like as you were obviously on this, so
It's okay.
I don't know which information necessarily like be like cut this out, don't cut this out.
Yeah. So just kind of dig deeper and figure out which like of this, what can stay and what can't.
Yeah, and so like dumbing it not dumbing it down, but you know.
Honestly, like for dummies, like a for dummies version.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. So not going like super in depth, but just being like enough of an outline where like if you hadn't known this stuff, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense, and then moving on to like, okay, this is what I want you to know from like that quick little crash course, pretty much.
Right. Okay.
No, you're good about yourself because when Bailey was talking, I was like, I just need to like write down everything.
Yeah. Version of so World War One and federal versus state
Yeah, like
versus local.
Yeah, like literally like such a quick like federal, state, local, and being like this like being like saying that really quick to me like it matters to this speech right now because of this. Because then I think what you're trying, from what my understanding from what you said, let me know if I'm wrong. Is like you explained that and then it was like saying pretty much like, well, the poor schools are going to stay poor and the rich ones are going to stay rich. Is that what you're pretty much explaining? Like how that is?
Can I use that?
Yeah. For sure. So then, yeah, pretty much just like dumbing it down to like saying what those were and pretty much being like, so the poor stay poor, the rich stay rich, and that is why.
And that is inherent to capitalism. Wow. Stay poor. Rich schools are going to stay rich. I'm just going to say it with the gunna because I feel like it would not be as good. Okay. All right. That felt good.
Good.
Is there anywhere, because I feel like everything else, like, I basically getting into like HR 771, do you feel like all of that was pretty succinct, like pretty good?
I think, so I know that everybody right now knows about that. Like I even knew obviously about like the rally that happened in Indy, like with the red shirts.
Right.
And,
I really wanted to like shock everybody.
Yeah.
That was the goal.
Yeah, so I like that one. So wait, so from here, I just want to like go through like almost like an outline. So you start with the story.
Yep.
Right. So then and from there you go into what's this next line? So you
just like
story.
explanation and history. How about that?
Yeah.
Explanation and history of
funding. You talk about the standardized test.
Yep.
And then you go into those test scores and how basically like local, federal, and state react to those test scores.
Yep.
And the money involved with that.
Yep.
Okay. And then from there, where does it go from there?
From there, I say this means education is a right under this is why disparities like the ones between DeKalb. Okay. And then I go into like DeKalb County Public Schools were on academic probation 2010 to 2012 and years after.
So what is that like to you? Like when you're saying that, like why do you think that's important to add?
I think that's important to add because it's like not only is this school underfunded, clearly, but they're underfunded for the reason that they're not good at academics or the academics that the state places on them.
Okay, so from there, so you talk about them being on academic probation.
Yeah, and so I say that means unless their state test scores go up, funding for an already struggling school will be cut. How does that make sense?
Right. Okay, yeah. So then that's pretty much playing into this part of like the poor stays poor, the rich stays rich.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I like keeping that part because it still goes back to your story and like your personal experience with it. Yeah. I'm just trying to like think back through. Yeah. Because I'm just trying to think like pretty much just like simplifying it. You know what I mean? Because it was just like a lot at once. So I'm like trying to think like, I mean, you'll do it better than I can, but I guess like that's like the big message pretty much from this, and like we'll keep like going. Obviously, but just being like simplifying it.
Yeah.
Down to like the main core part that you want to stay.
Right. Okay. And then after I get into like, oh, capitalism is bad.
So do you want to talk about why capitalism is bad with the school?
Yeah, that's like the goal because like it's because we've capitalized it. It's not a right anymore.
When you give the speech, I would like make that a little bit more of like this is my point.
Okay.
Because I didn't really get it like really until more towards the end that I was like, this is what like your whole big thing was.
Right.
Like I couldn't tell during the middle part of the speech with all the information like what was like what I should have been like really paying attention to the most.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I say like my name is Megan Markarian.
Okay.
This is basically like my thesis statement. I believe the capitalization and commodification of our public education, wow, I will shorten her up, has led to the funding disparities we currently see. And as a result, we have lost public education as a civil liberty, and thus we have failed our students in their inalienable right to do so.
Okay. Yes. Now I know what you're talking about. I remember when you said your name and I was like, yes. So I like that.
So maybe insert this again. Not like the whole thing, but like just say like, okay, like this is like we have capitalized off of education and this is literally why this is. We are making money off of a right.
Yeah. So pretty much I like all how you say because I think that like that makes you sound when you say I was like, wow, you sound really smart. But then again like pretty much jumping it down being like, yeah, so like this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in like saying that whole thing is good especially once you like shorten up everything else more to like the, crash course.
Yeah, I think that was the longest part.
Which
what wasn't the crash course?
Right.
Would you agree?
Yes, because I was when you were following like when you were talking about when you're telling me now I remember, but I wouldn't have remembered by the end of your speech, I couldn't have told you, like, gone through easily, like, where the steps were, just because it was so, like, you started here, gave, like, what it was, and then kind of came back, and then I was kind of like, wait, what information, where is it going, kind of, I guess, you know?
Right. Okay. Okay, and then I talk about expenditure cuts. Basically, why hasn't this happened yet? Like, what is keeping us from doing so? Why is this bill currently here? And then I like the quote from Forbes: "This left nearly half the states spending less on schools in 2016 than they were in 2007." Keep that.
So, okay, so where does this fit in your speech? So you're talking about. Sorry, keep making me like go back.
No, you're fine. I honestly like. Jesus Christ,
Good. I feel like if you can't tell right off the bat where it goes, maybe you don't need it. You know what I mean? Like right now you're like, wait, I don't know where it goes, and maybe it's like you don't need it. And if you're starting to like, once you rewrite it, if you think, oh wait, I want to add this really quick, then be like a quick little like, oh, expenditures, this is this.
Right. So like, why? I think I'm gonna say like, okay, so due to the 2008 recession, we all know the recession. I don't need to explain that.
No. When you say 2008, I'm like, I just think, yeah.
Okay.
No, don't go that in depth. I think
there are. So I'll say, okay, so due to the 2008 recession, then according to Forbes, it left nearly half the states spending less on schools in 2016 than they were in 2007. There are efforts to get funding back to where it used to be. These efforts come from H.R. Bill 771, the Choice in Education Act, and these are valiant efforts with vouchers for students, that kind of thing. I explain it, and then I say, oh, well, this is still in the House. It's been there since January. Right?
So that is what. Was that what the rally was for? Was the getting this?
Yeah, so with protests like Red for Ed in our midst, the time to act couldn't be more prudent.
Okay, so you know you have that slide, the red for, I would maybe, instead of talking about the act and then ending with that, maybe start with, like, if you want to still talk about this, start by saying, like, I'm sure you've all seen, like, starting with, I'm sure you've all seen the, the rally that went on this past whatever, and if you're not aware of what that about, it was about this. And then, like, saying, like, and that's been there since January. So it kind of shortens it, but it, like, starts us here. Where we're like, yes, I know what that is, and being like, oh, like, because then when you said it, that was like, oh, because I didn't really know. I mean, I knew what they wanted, but I didn't know it was, like, I didn't know it was a bill, or that it was, like, in the house, or that it was, like, trying to get passed.
I'm just saying, okay, wait, okay.
Like, go to where you're, I know. It's
should have, so. I don't know if I should include it now, because I think I may have been misleading. So I included that to kind of say, like, there's urgency to get money, because these teachers basically just want money for schools. Like, that's what they're fighting for. And they're fighting the fact that, like, there is legislation. This is a federal bill. This is not a state bill.
Right.
These are only Indiana teachers. I included this just to say, like, look, people are angry. Look, this is evidence of anger. This isn't evidence. So I don't think I should include it then.
Okay, yeah, because I thought it was, yeah.
We'll just, like, delete her right now. Did you like this? I know, like, I need to be better about.
Okay, because you're going to talk about, that side's going to be here, right? Like, when you talk about, like, this part?
When I talk about the Forbes, but I say this left nearly half the states spending less on schools in 2016 than they were in 2007.
Okay, yeah, no, I like that. I think it's, like, especially when you show, like, when you're up there, and if you say, like, this is where that's at,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, when you're talking, if you kind of, like, gesture what you mean, I liked it when you did that.
Okay. So then this is going to be the slide for the recession. It's going to be like, due to the recession, I'm going to get rid of these black slides because I don't think they're doing me any justice. Because I think, like, I'm pretty good at, like, this is not me trying to inflate my ego.
No.
I think I'm good at, like, making sure people pay attention to me in the slide.
No, you have a very good, like, I was not... Like,
okay.
it's you. You have a really good voice. Like, you know what you're...
I think maybe it could have just been a pressure thing, too. I felt very nervous.
And then also, so then when you were just talking about, you took on that slide because you were trying to tell people, like...
There's urgency here.
So there's urgency. So, like, you're saying the government took the money, and the urgency is that you want... You want people to be as, really nervous about this.
So, okay, let me just read the line to you. And with protests like Red for Ed in our midst, the time to act couldn't be more prudent.
Right.
That's literally the only time I mentioned med for ed, though, so I don't think I should include it.
No, I don't think you should either. I'm just thinking, like, okay. Like, I'm just thinking. Let's keep going through it, so you're not going to add that.
Right, so I'm just going to, like...
So if we're not adding that, then like, where are we before that?
We are just at HR Bill 771.
And is that so that's the one you're talking about where you're like they're trying to get money
They're just
back?
like, yeah, and they're just like, well, the government's saying like, oh, we're just going to give these students vouchers. We're just going to throw money at the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to fix it.
And what's your solution?
And my solution is saying that's not what we should do. We should, 1, remove standardized tests, and then 2, fund schools equitably from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So saying that like whoever needs what just gets it because like they need it. And then ensure that all students go to school for free so that way they don't even have to worry about this because this isn't something that the students should have to worry about anyways.
Like free, like because then I saw you said something about community school, like free, like all like everything. Or
so community college is usually like 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You go to community college. So like basically from like 6 years old to 20 years old, you're getting free schooling.
Okay.
Right. And then if you decide to go after that,
mm-hmm.
that's on your own dime.
Okay, so I understood what you just told me like that easier than when you were talking here. Just because you use a lot of not, and like it could just be because I'm not like super familiar with like not lawful terms because they're not lawful, but you know like kind of. So when you were saying that to me, I was like, oh, like now I get what you're saying. So I think following when you'd say like, okay, I have 3 reasons, it was like 1, and it was just a lot of words when like you said it like that. I'm not saying it always needs to be like super simple, but I really think overall just simplifying it all down.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like making it like that long, like all the numbers and kind of like from this bill it was this and this is why, like I'm not saying we don't care, like that's not at all what I mean, like it's interesting, but I think because when you think of a TED Talk it's always like this, and like it's not, I don't want to say because it wasn't not inspiring, because it was, and how you delivered it was just like a lot of it was just like a lot of information on top of you being inspiring. So I was like really was excited, but I was like, but I don't know if I understand.
I'm excited.
Yeah, like, I don't know if I understand.
Okay.
So I think like how you just explained that to me being like 1, 2, and 3, being like these are my 3 reasons. Like this is how I think
like,
we need to fix it, and this is like what's happening that's like fixing it.
So if I say like 1, we're going to remove standardized tests because they base student success not on how they learn, but on a number, and we want to base student success on how they can grow in their learning.
Next.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Like that was like okay, perfect. Like that's what you want. That's what you want to do. Like is that what this you talk about? Is that what that's trying to do?
No.
That's
the point. So HR Bill, like because I'm very clearly giving a lot of existential dread, right? I'm like,
yeah,
you feel very hopeless by that point, and that's the point. And then I'm like, oh look, like maybe the government might do something. They're not. The government does not have a viable solution here.
So wait, what is this bill saying?
This bill is saying, so do you know what a voucher is?
No. See, that's what I'm like,
oh, it's okay. It's okay. My video is not. Sorry, I should upload a video. Okay. A small printed. Okay, so basically. So it's basically like a voucher technically is a small printed piece of paper that entitles the holder to a discount or that may be exchanged for goods or services. So basically they're saying we're going to give you money, but individually to each student who needs it, private or public. So they're saying like, so
not to the whole school.
No, not to the whole school, just to students individually.
Okay.
That's what this bill is saying. That's what a voucher does. Because like, for example, like my cousin goes to a very prestigious private school, and anyway, but he went on a voucher. Like he went. Think of it like financial aid.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was like. Oh, so then why does it so?
And it's important to note that like we only use vouchers for private schools because public education is free. So
what they're trying to do. So that's what you're saying has been in since January, but nothing has happened from it?
Right, and even if something did happen from it, it's not going to fix the solution. You can't give financial aid for just a public institution because they're not supposed to pay something in the first place.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Wait, re-say that one more time.
So Vouchers
Like
are
you just said.
essentially like financial aid, but financial aid is really only for institutions like this, institutions that are meant to make a buck.
Mm-hmm.
Public schools weren't meant to make a buck in the first place. So even if H.R. Bill 771 went through the House, went through the Senate, it was signed, it's a law. It's not going to make a difference because like public education was never meant to make a buck in the first place.
So that part, when you say like public education that meant to make a buck in the first place, I'm like that clicks with me.
Okay.
So when you so say that how you were gonna originally say it in your speech. Like if you were gonna give it again, like how you gave it, like pretty much
Right
say
now?
how you were.
Okay.
You can say and do like how you said it, and I want to see.
Yeah, so efforts from H.R. Bill 771, the Choices in Education Act, are valiant. You know, essentially the act is trying to give vouchers to students, which is basically just money given to each student individually to go to school. However, with protests like Redford, oh wait, we're not including that, are we? No. Okay. So that's it.
So so you give it.
However, with the pattern associated with capitalism and recessions, what happens? Capitalism is cyclical. So what happens when the next recession hits? And then there's more after that. But
Okay, so we should figure out a way to reword it a little, just because I like when you said like public education was never supposed to make a buck in the first place.
yeah,
I think if you could fit that in there, and again, like simplify, like say the name of what you're talking about, like yeah, that's fine. Like saying
Okay.
what it's called, and then being like pretty much, and like saying the voucher, just being like pretty much, this isn't gonna help this like saying like pretty much this bill, even if it isn't a bill,
Yeah.
even if it does get passed, isn't gonna make a difference because public schools weren't supposed to make a buck in the first place. Like I think ending like that, like saying like they weren't like being like that makes no sense.
and then ending that part and then going to solutions.
Yeah, so being like, this doesn't matter. Like, being like, this isn't going to work. These are my 3 reasons why this is going to work. You know what I mean? Like, you're
yeah.
saying, like, that doesn't make sense, and here's why. And, like, pretty much just simplifying that first time, but I really like if you ended it with, like, public schools weren't supposed to make a buck in the first place. I'd be like, so true. Like, are they even,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. If
Okay.
you like that. I mean, it's up to
Yeah.
you. Like, it is. If you...
No,
I
I do like that. I'm taking any help I can get here, obviously. So talking about Passy Salberg, are you still okay talking about him?
Not for as long as you... So why do you want to talk about him? Is this
That's
his idea?
That's his model. But that was also like what I thought as well. So like I went into this thinking like, yeah, we gotta get rid of standardized tests. Schools gotta be funded equitably. I added the schools attend thing. All kids attend school for free.
You added that.
Or no, from his plan I added that.
Okay.
So these two we had in common. And then he was like, oh, and then everybody should attend school for free. And I was like, hot shit, yeah, they should. And so that happened. And so the reason I'm mentioning him is because like he knows his stuff. Like he's literally like an advising member for other countries for their public education in the EU and other places.
I think bringing him up is good. I wouldn't, because you talked about him for a little, like you talked about him a lot, and then you went into this. So I feel like if you say like, that you obviously give him the credit, being like giving him the credit. You can say like, and you're saying like this is one of the best. You know, they have one of the best like education in the world or whatever. And saying that is good, and then yeah. I mean, I guess again, just like shortening it. Like I don't think talking about him is bad.
Right.
But like being like, this is who he is. This is where he's from. This is why he matters, and then
this is why I'm talking about him.
This is why I brought him. Yeah, like I think like bringing him up quick, like not long on him. Like not that he's not important because it's like your ideas, but you want to get to the part where you're like, this is what I want from you people in this room,
right?
Which is like, this is my solution. This is what I want you to think about and to like be mad about or like to be passionate about.
Right. I think. Okay, so literally I ad-libbed a lot during this. That's why it was 20 minutes. When I originally just like read through the whole thing on my computer, it was 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I ad-lib a lot. That's just like,
right.
I'm on the debate team, so just
you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
I'm an ad-libber. That's what I do. Which makes stuff like this so hard.
Right.
So literally my thing says Passy Salberg is the answer. He's a Finnish representative on numerous international education and government advising committees, so he knows his stuff. He's also taught in Finland, the #1 education system in the world. I came across him in my research, and his ideologies and mine vibe really well.
That.
Keeping this.
That. Like, I like that. That was like, I knew you were talking about, I knew why you brought him up, and it was like you saying, like, we have the same ideas, here they are. You know what I mean? That I'm gonna be like, okay, like yeah, I know, yes.
Okay.
And I don't want you to like, and obviously like I like that you still add your own thing. Like I really like that.
Yeah.
Like it made it you. Like that's why I think I liked it so much. Because I was like, oh, like you could tell you weren't like robotic reading off of your cards. Like
Right.
you really glanced and you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
You know. So I don't want you to not do that. You
No,
know? But like definitely like a little bit pull back to like simplify it all down, so that it is the 8 to 10 minutes, and so that we're all like, oh, like you're passionate. Now we know what we're supposed to be passionate about. This is what you want me to do when I leave this room. And you kind of have that like part in there where you're kind of like, this is what I want you to do or feel when you leave this room. I don't have to say it, but
so like, I say, I ad-libbed again. Education is a right, and if nothing changes, I hope you all have the money for private schools, because that's the future without effective public education. I ask that you stand with me. I ask that you stand in the fight for public education. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I liked your ending. I really like when you. I really liked when
like this section. So like this is the part where I say this sounds like a tall order. I know. Did you like the part about like, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, that was cute. I liked that, and I liked how you. Yeah, I liked that. So I really liked like this whole section. Like, I really liked how you did all of this. Like this to me was the part where I like. No one was like, I finally, because like I knew pieces of what you were saying as you went. It was just
finally, yeah.
I was like, oh, like this is where, like, this is what we're getting at. Like this is the solution. Like this all came together now.
Yeah.
So I think like if you, once you simplify everything else and you get to this part, I really liked your ending. I really liked the part where you bring up the stars again. Like I really liked that.
Okay. Good. I feel good about this.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything you want me to go through real fast? Is there anything you want to see again?
I really liked your intro, but I think the same thing, like, just, like, making it a little shorter.
Okay,
you know
do you want me to do it again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I really liked, like, all the little commentary, just I was kind of, like, waiting for, like,
the point.
Like, being like, okay, like, I'm going through your school day.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Imagine going to school, and you see your best friend, and they're sitting at your, the cafeteria table that you guys always sit at in the morning, and you guys walk to your first class, and you're walking to your first class, and, well, you gotta stop at your locker, because book bags. And so you stop at your locker, and who is standing at your locker? None other than your dumb locker buddy, you love him, like, you share a locker with him, but he's just got all of these notebooks, and he's, like, grappling, and you're like, I gotta get to class, dude, and he's like, I gotta get to class, dude, and you're like, well, I have to get to class. And so he's, like, putting all of his stuff in there, and so finally you get your turn. You and your bestie are walking to class. It's pre-algebra time. You're like, yeah, we're going to balance some equations. Cool. Teacher's going to write up on the board, yeah, equation. And you're like, yep, I got it. Just kidding. It's textbook taping day. Textbook taping day. Right? So you're like, okay, guess I better go get my fucking tape. Wow, sorry. Better go get my tape. And so you go get your tape with your friend. You guys are taping up your books, doing your thing. Teacher's trying to figure out the technology that he was just given that he doesn't know how to use because, no offense, he's old. And so then you guys leave that classroom. The next couple of periods pass the same way. And then it's time for lunch. And oh my gosh, like, what are you going to have for lunch today? You're not really vibing with anything. You go with your usual. The cheesy breadsticks and the apple, right? And that glue-like just substance that is cheese in the breadsticks really pairs well with the crunch of the apple. So you're feeling really good. A little heavy, but really good afterwards. And so you walk to your next class, and classes kind of pass until, oh my gosh, it's the 7th period bell. You walk to your locker, and you get there first this time. Imagine going to school. Imagine going to school. Yep, rewind. Imagine going to school, and oh my god, bestie, what's going on? And you see your bestie, and he's like, hang on, I'm eating my yogurt parfait. And you're like, dude, we gotta go to class. And he's like, hang on, I got strawberries, let me finish. And so he's eating his yogurt parfait, and while he finishes that, you go and you're like, oh my god, like, just gonna get my next stool. What am I trying to say? I'm gonna get my next caffeine fix. And so you go to the coffee cart, and you're like, hey, I want a triple espresso. I had a long night. And they're like, here you go. So you guys you're walking to your locker, and oh my gosh, there's Bauer and Paige, the school therapy dog and therapist. And so after some pets and a meaningful conversation, you guys continue on to your class, feeling a little bit more fulfilled. And so this first class is Earth and Space Science. And Earth and Space Science is so cool, but it's even cooler today because you get to go to the planetarium today. You get to go to the planetarium. and everybody's been talking about the planetarium, and you haven't gotten to go yet, and so you're like, oh my god, I want to go to the planetarium. And so you and your friend go to the planetarium, and you spend 55 minutes just looking at the stars and hearing your dumb teacher talk about the stars, but you're like, I just want to look. And so you look at the stars, and then after that, the day kind of passes a little bit. You have your periods. You have the next classes. And so then you go to lunch, and you're not really vibing with the Cuban turkey bowl. Egg rolls don't really sound like your thing, and neither do the chicken nuggets. So you go to your usual, the soup and salad bar. Of course, it's delicious. So after soup and salad, you know, the next couple of periods pass, and you're like, cool, it's time to go home. And so you see your bestie, and you all stroll to the bus lot. Another day has passed. Another one of the books.
It's good. I like it.
Okay, was that shorter?
Yes, it was shorter for sure. Your first one, because like yes, that was shorter, and I like the caffeine fix. The only thing I would say is when you end on the first day, maybe make a quick transition to be like, okay, but now picture this. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
okay.
being clear that it's kind of like I'm gonna do
So,
a different day now, because every time I'm kind of like, so wait, we're at a different we're at a different school like that. The first one is like your everyday public school, and this one is one that not a lot of us experience.
Right.
So like at the end when you're like, and your day ends.
Right.
Now picture this. And then going into, you see your bestie and going into all that, like,
right.
saying that day. Then you can be like, clearly, the two of those were different.
The
Like,
triple espresso is not real. I will be very real about that. But I feel like it's okay. Because I definitely just, got...
It's still, you get what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I'm trying to play it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did have a school therapist and a school therapist dog. But she went through the different the two middle schools and the high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so she, was at our school, 3 days a week, and then each middle school 1 day a week.
Still though.
She had an office, and,
but,
Bauer is the cutest dog.
Right. But still, so, I think just making a little transition there being, now picture this, not just jumping, because then I'm kind of like, are we, wait.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
where are we?
Where are we? So I think saying, now picture this as being, this is, different. This is a new-ish sort of thing. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
But it was shorter, and, it was fun, you know what you're trying to get at, and,
right.
obviously you have really good commentary, so I'm always kind of that's funny. Yeah, so I like it.
I feel like this is the first presentation I, can bring my personality out in. Which sounds really weird.
No,
okay.
It's awesome. Okay, so, yeah, I think. So pretty much, for the ending, I just want you to basically simplify it all down.
Yeah.
And, get your timing down pretty much, and being okay, this is 8 to 10 minutes, I'm good. So, simplifying it and kind of thinking, putting yourself in the shoes of, me, I don't know all the words that go with education, so,
right.
Simpling it down, being obviously I know what this means, maybe they won't, but pretty much just, simplifying it down, but everything else, your delivery is great, you're excited about it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I feel good about this. I feel better.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
You're a good coach.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to end it on that note.